every chief during their potlatches would bring out their most valuable crest, which is Dzoonakwa, wild woman of the woods. And you'd see the puckered up lips carved on the mask, sleepy eyes, fur regalia. Some depictions have a basket on the back, like my family. Other families might have a sack or a baby one with them, or two come out, or a transformation mask where it transforms into something else. So it's pretty amazing seeing that. And then, of course, driving through the community of Alert Bay, you'd see the graveyard with all the memorial totem poles, and five of them had Dzoonakwas carved at the base, which is the highest ranked crest, and they're displaying it on a memorial pole for a chief who passed. And with outstretched arms, like you see on some of them, it's telling you that in life, his wealth and power could be felt around the world. So the Dzoonakwa has a lot of significance to us, and more so being a kid, because you're told, Tommy, you behave yourself. Otherwise, Dzoonakwa's watching. And if you misbehave and act up and are lazy, fight, steal things, don't eat your food or do your chores, she's going to come at night with big hairy arm and stick it through the window and grab you and push tree sap in your eyes from the spruce tree so you can't see. And she's going to throw you in that basket on her back, carry you deep into the forest, up a mountain to her invisible home. And that's where Dzoonakwa is going to boil you up and eat you, so you behave yourself. Hearing that, you definitely were instilled with Sasquatch right from the earliest memory. And, even my kids, I put the fear of Dzoonakwa in them many times.
Aloha and welcome to another show, guys. Our special guest today is Tom Sewid, a Kwakwaka'wakw and Cree First Nation storyteller, a Sasquatch investigator, and expert on Indigenous history. Tom has spent decades living in the wild, gathering first-hand encounters, exploring the deep cultural significance of Sasquatch, and sharing the traditional stories passed down through generations. His knowledge and experience offers a perspective you won't hear anywhere else. Before we dive in, please be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a positive review. That's the best way for others to find us and for our ohana to grow stronger. The more we support this community, the more we can keep these important conversations going. Now, without further ado, let's welcome Tom to the show.
Before we start, when you get back to Hawaii, we should do one on the little people.
Yes, the Menehune.
Yeah, and I've followed a couple video clips about that, but yeah, we should do one, and I can bring my mask and regalia, the bukwas, we call it.
That's awesome. That is really cool. Yes, that would be nice. Thank you. Are you ready to start?
Yep.
All right. Well, you got all your equipment. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's one of my cups.
Yeah, I
One of
love
my
it.
designs.
Oh, man, you do some great artwork. Love it.
Thanks. It's all through here.
I see it. That is pretty darn cool. Well, aloha, Tom, and welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you here today, and I know you've spent years deep into the wilderness, or the bush, I think is what you call it, gathering stories and experiences and knowledge about the Dzoonakwa. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but from both your personal encounters and your Indigenous tradition, it's truly an honor to have this conversation with you today. And I'm really excited to.
Greetings. Thanks for inviting me
Yeah.
on. Yeah, I'm a
Yes.
member of the Kwakwaka'wakw First Nation, North American Indians, Northern Vancouver Island, British Columbia on the coast. And then my mother is a full-blooded Cree Indian from the Central Plains of Canada. So I'm mixed blood, but I spent a lifetime in bush world, water world, being a commercial fisherman for over 45 years, which would get me to places that most humans will never get to, places like Clem2, Port Eliza, Kinkum Village, and the list goes on. And when I was there, the people used to come down to the dock and welcome you and, bum some cigarettes off you or a can of Coca-Cola. And, I'd always ask them, what do you know about your Sasquatch? Oh, let me tell you about our Sasquatch. And then they just start going on about them.
That's awesome. Can you share some of your first, maybe your personal first experience or encounter with a Sasquatch?
Well, as a kid growing up in Alert Bay, which is the Numgeese tribe's village of the Kwakwaka'wakw Nation, but my family lived there and were Numgeese band members, tribe members at the time. As a young boy, you go up to the potlatch up in the ceremonial big house, Gilksy, and you'd watch the regalia being brought out, the crests coming to life with mask and regalia, batons being pounded on a hollow cedar log with 20 men around it and deep baritone songs singing and telling you of an encounter of the chief and his family's ancestor. And that's the crest and dance you would see on the floor and hear the song. But every chief during their potlatches would bring out their most valuable crest, which is Dzoonakwa, wild woman of the woods. And you'd see the puckered up lips carved on the mask, sleepy eyes, fur regalia. Some depictions have a basket on the back, like my family. Other families might have a sack or a baby one with them, or two come out, or a transformation mask where it transforms into something else. So it's pretty amazing seeing that. And then, of course, driving through the community of Alert Bay, you'd see the graveyard with all the memorial totem poles, and five of them had Dzoonakwa's carved at the base, which is the highest ranked crest, and they're displaying it on a memorial pole for a chief who passed. And with outstretched arms, like you see on some of them, it's telling you that in life, his wealth and power could be felt around the world. So the Dzoonakwa has a lot of significance to us, and more so being a kid because you're told, Tommy, you behave yourself. Otherwise, Dzoonakwa is watching. And if you misbehave and act up and are lazy, fight, steal things, don't eat your food or do your chores, she's going to come at night with big hairy arm and stick it through the window and grab you and push tree sap in your eyes from the spruce tree so you can't see. And she's going to throw you in that basket on her back, carry you deep into the forest, up a mountain to her invisible home. And that's where Dzoonakwa is going to boil you up and eat you. So you behave yourself. So hearing that, you definitely were instilled with Sasquatch right from his earliest memory. And, even my kids, I put the fear of Dzoonakwa in them many times.
That's great. How large
But
do these Tsunakwa get? Is it as big as that? Really? How big is that behind you? Is he like 8
he
feet?
behind me is 8.5 feet. So that's a big Sasquatch in the Pacific Northwest. I've heard stories of 9 and 10 and 12 footers, but I've never seen tracks or evidence or seen one. But I have seen them on numerous occasions. And the biggest one I saw was over 8.5 feet tall. It was big and shoulders just as wide as Biggie behind me. And the first time I saw one, and I look back in memory because I was probably about 12 years old. I was in a pickup truck with my father driving north of Campbell River through the forest on the highway. We come down this hill and it turned to the right. And, we've been there many times. There's a guardrail there for the corner, and there's a pullover on the other side for the southbound traffic with the cement garbage can to be bear proof. And as we come down, our headlights illuminated that guardrail, and there sitting on it was this what I thought was a big man at first. It put its left arm down and it just sprung, and you could see the hair moving, you could see the muscles, you could see the gray white soles of its big feet, and it disappeared down the bank behind it. And my dad's like all excited. We just saw a Dzoonakwa, Sasquatch. And I was so scared, I skittered over and sat beside my dad on the pickup truck. And even though we're going 60 miles an hour, but that was my first time I'd ever seen one. And it stuck with me, of course. And I think it helped me read the books that came out, John Green and others, and listen to Rene de Hinden because he was Canadian, and John Green. There would be on news and different shows in British Columbia. And then Leonard Nimoy's movie that he narrated, Unsolved Mysteries or something, came out about Loch Ness Monster, UFOs, the Mayan calendar, and Sasquatch. And that's where I saw the famous 1967 Patty clip of Roger Patterson, Bob Gimlin. And I'm just like, that's what I saw. That's exactly what I saw. And I dwelled deeper into the mythology, I guess you could say, from other tribes and people, and then the science component I dwelled upon. I was always Tommy 10,000 questions, and I always had my head in the book. So Sasquatch, when I went into the up to Alert Bay in the summer when I was around 14, there was the Alert Bay Trading Post, just a corner store, but it's a small community. And one of the only stores, and I went in there and they had all John Green books and everything. And I was commercial fishing. I bought every one of them that summer, and still have some of them in my collection. And then, I'd be out in the bush. We'd be, go anchor out, go ashore at night when the big low tide was happening, and we go clam digging. And all of a sudden, you'd get that walrus yakbala, that big stink. And one of the older guys would go, "Uh-oh, sounds like we got Dzoonakwa watching us. We must be on their shellfish beach. Tommy, take those cockles type of shellfish. That's a delicacy, and you don't get very many when you're clam digging. We're going for mainly butter clams, which you might get 100 pounds of butter clams and maybe one cockle. That's how, hard they're to come by. They're the delicacy of we native people, as well as the Sasquatch and Bukwas, the little people. But we'll get into that later. But anyway, I take this armload of cockles up the low tide beach about 60, 70 yards, get up to the wall of black forest, and you could smell it, the Sasquatch. And I'm throwing those cockles in. And I turned, and man, my footsteps are probably as wide as a Sasquatch running. I went down that beach so fast, get back to the lanterns. That was scary. And then as I got older, I'd be the one to point to the young guy. Hey, you hear that tree get pushed down? There's no wind. There's no leaves on it either. It's wintertime. So something pushed it down, probably a Dzoonakwa, telling us, what are you doing on my shellfish beach? You take those cockles there and you go up to the tree line and throw them in, give them a gift, and that way it doesn't bother us. Boy, those kids, sometimes they'd be almost crying when they come running back from the bushes. And then, being a avid hunter, and when I was in my late teens, me and my cousin, we would disappear for days upon days. We'd take a boat up the inlets and we'd just go up old logging roads, go through the timber, punch through into the alpine at the high levels, and just walk through what we called the stairway to heaven. It was just so beautiful up there, and a new world. It wasn't like down at sea level. It was a totally different world, and saw the animals and trails, footprints, seen them a couple times at a distance, and you'd hear them at night. You'd hear them bang, bang, and across the valley or hill, another one would answer, and they're just basically intimidating you. You'd be lying in your sleeping bag and your tarp around you, and pull your gun a little closer, and we knew that we were never allowed to harm or disrespect or think of killing a Sasquatch, but fear is fear. You never know if big hairy arms are going to come and grab you. And so finally, in I guess early 1990s, I was a captain of a commercial salmon seine fish boat with a crew of 5 people. But at that time, it was just my girlfriend and my engineer and my native crewman. We anchored out in front of my trailer. I had a 26-foot trailer that I built a 10 by 10 addition on the beach when I was doing some native watchman's work for my native tribe. And we're just anchored out after dark, and we're cooking a pot of crab legs on the Coleman stove on the hatch covers where the fish hold is. My girlfriend was in the galley playing cards with Trevor, my engineer. And then all of a sudden, we just heard this bang against that aluminum sided trailer. And, right away I'm thinking, maybe it was metal kerosene cans for the heater we had underneath the trailer. They might have contracted because of the cool of dark. And I'm thinking about it. And I'm going, no, I brought those home. They're in my garage. And then we saw 2 shadow figures, basically like Biggie, walk in front of that trailer. Now, this is a full moon out, so it's really lit up. There's no wind, no rain, no clouds, just still calm. And we see these 2 big figures walk by the trailer. Trailer's got to be 10 feet high, and those things, their heads were just a little bit lower than that, the big one anyway. And then you heard that whistling, chirping, warbling lip smack, and wall is yachbala, that stink, and gag and stink. And I heard my buddy beside me say in his language, Sasquatch. And I'm thinking, geez, maybe it is Sasquatch. So I went to the galley door, opened leaned my head in and said, Jojo, turn off that boombox and you two come on deck. We think we got two Sasquatches on the beach by the trailer. So of course they came out, they smelled it. You heard the whistle warbling chirp again. And Trevor looks at me and goes, well, what the hell is that? And I said, remember when we had that little encounter last summer, or you did behind the trailer? I think they're back. At the same time of the year, October. And Trevor flicked his cigarette overboard, ran through the galley, down the engine room, shut the doorway, big metal door in the forecastle, the bow of the boat downstairs for the crew's quarters. That was last we saw of him that night. He wasn't coming back out. And we put the spotlight on and illuminated a big male and a big female. And the male was standing just inside the 4 or 5 foot high reedy grass with spruce and hemlock and sapling trees, maybe about 12, 15 feet high. But that Sasquatch just dropped on his knee and pulled his arm in front of his face. And you could see two eyes reflecting, one eye, 1.5 eye, two eyes, as it was breathing, looking at that spotlight. And I'm talking a spotlight that's about that round and about, 18 inches deep. It's a powerful spotlight on the boat. And the female, she dropped to her knees like a fetal position with her head on the ground. And you see her covering her head, but she was looking underneath her armpit. And you could see her reflected yellowish orange eye. And 20, 25 minutes they're on that beach. They weren't moving. We were throwing potatoes, apples, splashing in the water, trying to get them to move. They wouldn't. Turn the spotlight off after about 25 minutes. And then you could hear that. And then they enter the forest, you hear the cracking of twigs and that. And then all of a sudden, a big loud noise of a rotten tree being pushed down and crashing on the forest. And they disappeared.
Oh,
Well,
they were scared, I guess.
Probably more angry that we lit them up with a spotlight and stopped their harvesting.
Yeah.
So then Jojo went to bed. Trevor's downstairs still. So Dean and I, we stayed up smoking cigarettes, sitting up on the bridge of the boat up top. And then all of a sudden, about 45 minutes goes by, and to our sort of left, the next part of the bay, which is all low water, muddy sands with a creek that comes down. So it's washed out all of the sand and sediment, and it's just boulders where the creek run is. All of a sudden, we heard what we call a blue heron, a type of crane. And when they get spooked by a mink or something at night when they're sleeping, they'll fly away and then they're like a pterodactyl. That's the other thing we call them. That thing got spooked, flew out of the bay, went by the boat and disappeared. Something spooked it. And then we could hear that Sasquatch was walking down that exposed stream bed, stepping on the boulders. We waited till it got out to the middle of the bay, which we figured, and we hit it with a spotlight again, but we couldn't see. There was mist coming up from the sediment and sands. And, now we're about 2.5, 3 hours into dark, so it's cooled down considerably first week of October. And then we got some eye reflection. We shut it off. And when our eyes got adjusted to the dark again, you could see this rock outcropping, kind of grayish purple in the moonlight. And you just saw this big, I got this leg biggie behind me lift up and the shoulders on it. I was just like, holy geez, that thing's huge. And then it disappeared and you could hear it going through the bush. And then all of a sudden it come out on the solid rock beach, high tide area. Then it disappeared in the bush and it's coming along parallel in my boat. And now it's like maybe 60 yards from us. We're pretty close to the beach, anchored out. And then it came out of the bush again because you could hear it. And it was crouched down, moving. And Dean goes, what the F is that? And that thing stood up. And you could see the hair hanging off his arms, going boom, boom, boom. I ran through the galley, hit the spotlight, spun it, looked out the window, and illuminated his back as he reached up, grabbed a tree, and pulled himself into the forest, looked back at us, and gave us that grimace, and then disappeared in the bush. And you could hear it crashing through the bush, and it sort of came back the way it had come down the beach. crashing through what we call salal. It's a really waxy type of roundish leaf that grows like thick as yarn basket, and it sounds like you're dragging a plastic tarp when you walk through it. It's really noisy. And so it wasn't hiding. It was crash, crash, crash. It stopped and it did a high pitched, deep whistle chirp. And then further up in the forest, a higher pitched whistle chirp, the female. And you could hear them crunching, walking till they met. And then they turned and walked westward deeper into the forest. That would bring them into the abandoned native village of my tribe, known as Mimchamlis, known famously as Mamalala Kula, village of Alas Potlatch, where there is abandoned houses, fruit trees gone wild, and where I did my native tours to the tourists to show them the fallen memorial poles and welcoming poles and big house remains in the village. And I knew darn well that they were going in there first week of October for the plums and crab apples and whatever else, blackberries. And it was a pretty amazing experience. It was one of the better ones documented in North America at the time. I got out, finished my commercial fishery a couple days later, put the boat away and port, and I drove down Vancouver Island to my parents' house and told my dad, "Hey, guess what?" He goes, "Geez, that's funny. You should say that. This guy showed up at my door like 2 weeks ago. White beard, white hair." And he's all excited like a little chipmunk. And he's like, "I'm Dr. Bindernagel. I'm understand, Mr. Sewid, that you saw a Sasquatch. I did a presentation at a school, and your nephew, Norman Sewid, his young boy, said that my Uncle Elvin saw a Sasquatch." And so my dad said, "Oh, come on in." And he shared with John Bindernagel that no, I didn't have an experience. I saw tracks, but my friend saw one run across the Vancouver Island Highway last year. So anyway, John interviewed my dad and then gave him his phone number. And so my dad grabbed it. He goes, "You should give that guy a call." So I phoned him and introduced myself, and he was all excited. And I said, "Well, I'm heading back to Campbell River tomorrow. I can stop by your house," which I did in his town of Courtney. And that would start a lifelong friendship, that Dr. John Bindernagel and I did so much investigating and talking. And he put me in his first book, Sasquatch, North America's Undiscovered Great Ape. That encounter I just talked about is in there.
That's incredible. Wow. How many Sasquatch do you think there are out there today based on your knowledge and your
Quarter
experience? I mean,
million.
how many? Quarter of a million?
Yeah.
Wow. Are
It's
there is their population growing or do you think it's shrinking?
so I'm a unique investigator because I don't use the R word, researcher. I think you can't claim that name and title until you have a Diane Fossey, Jane Goodall interaction with Sasquatch. So everyone's a bumbling, stumbling investigator as far as I'm concerned. So I ask key questions. Like when I'm sitting there, because we listen to podcasts, we watch video casts, we watch TV documentaries, and come on now. No offense, but the white people are dry as a popcorn fart when it comes to Sasquatch. It's always the same old repetitive
Yeah.
stuff and speculation that goes out there to woo-woo world and portal jumping, orb turning, mind speaking, cloaking, UFO flying Sasquatches. I'm just like, oh my God, you're so full of BS. Your eyes should be brown like an Indian. And what I do is, because I've been an Indian all my life, going to be 60 next month, and I've been tied to my culture that is very tied to the Dzoonakwa Sasquatch. And then being a bushman, a grizzly bear hunting guide for over 20 years, living in the bush for over 26 years, I bring all of that experience. And then when I question people, because I'm well educated with an Ivy School Academy for 2 years in high school, Shawnee Lake Boys Private School, which was a boarding school, British type run, the highest, most prestigious one back in that era. And so I was taught how to study and how to research. And so when I ask questions, it's not the typical, "Oh, what color was it? Did you smell anything?" like everyone else does. I'm asking questions to them like, "When you were young, did you ever hear any stories about when the smallpox, tuberculosis,
I'm going to
influenza
ask you that.
swept
Yes.
through our native villages, and yours included. Did you ever hear stories about the Sasquatches coming with the diseases? And you just see these elders' eyes light up. I haven't thought about that since I was just a young girl. My grandfather told me, he was a chief, how he was in the longhouse and his men came in and said, Chief, you better come out here and look at this. The Gogi, the Sasquatches are at the edge of the trees at our village. And when he went out, they were holding their young and dragging their sick, covered in smallpox or coughing blood up with tuberculosis. And he would tell his people, go inside and get our sick people and show them that we too are sick. We have no remedy for this affliction that's sweeping our communities, our population, our families. And the Sasquatches would just turn and walk and drag their
Oh.
people back in the forest. So asking key questions like that gives you a better understanding. Talking to the shamans, I like to go and reach out to shamans and request that I can be trained by them. And as I'm being trained by them, like Omaha Indian Reserve with Omaha Medicine Lady, um, so you call your Sasquatch Sitonga, keeper of the medicine. Is that where your people learned the traditional remedies of roots, leaves, flowers, and other things? Well, yes, we'll disappear as a shaman. Sometimes we're trained by another shaman, but our shaman, for example, got in a car accident 25 years ago and died. We had no shaman. So I and a couple others went out and we lived in the forest for months, some of them almost 2 years, and we interacted with the Sitonga, the Sasquatch, and we learned the remedies. And we came back to the village, and now we're the medicine people of the tribe. So I asked that question of other tribes when I was up in the Northwest Territories, Yukon, British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, numerous states. And the native people tell me, oh, yes, our shaman apprentice hasn't been seen for over a year and a half, but he'll come back and he'll have the knowledge because he's out there with them right now. And then I asked the next question. I said, I went to my Helicum, my chief speaker of my family, Adam Dick. The Owl Called My Name book was written about him, was the main character in there. And the movie was based on that book, The Owl Called My Name. But Adam, who was one of the earliest grizzly bear trophy hunting guides in North America, along with Clayton Mack from the Newhalt Bella Coola Nation. Anyway, Adam's very wise hunter like I was and everything. That's why I followed in his footsteps. But I asked him, I said, do they speak our language? Oh, gee, that's a funny one. He goes, we went up in the 50s. We went up the Kinkum River on the canoe with outboards. Just came out. We went way up to the shallow water where we have a cabin and a smokehouse. And a teenager boy that was with us, we gave him a wooden box with a big pot of stew the ladies had made us before we left that morning. We said, go bring it up to the cabin, up the trail, and put the wood stove on and throw that on so we have warm meal tonight. All of a sudden, that kid come running back down the trail. Quick, quick, get in the boat. We got to go back. We got to leave. What do you mean we got to leave? When I got up to the cabin, this big Dzoonakwa was laying down, sleeping beside it, stood up, looked at me. Yo, hello, how are you doing? I don't know who you are. Well, how come you didn't answer him back? You know, could have told him, Eichmann, I'm doing good. I got my family with me. Speak Quack with them. They understand, Tommy. That's what you got to do. So, I've toyed with it, but other tribes, I've witnessed them actually pigeon communicating with their Sasquatch. So, Sasquatches, I firmly believe, even where I am here on the Olympic Peninsula, I know one tribe member who his son said, oh, we'd know when dad would go walkabout. We'd see all his shoes on the porch. No dad. We knew he was barefoot. He still do that, but not as long, eh, Dad? And he just put his head down. So when the son got up and left the table, I said, I've been watching you. You feral. You move like you're bushman. I said, I'm like that too. I spent so many years in bush. I said, you're interacting with your Sasquatch, aren't you? We'll get to know one another better. And that's what I've been trying to do, reach out to him so we can make that bond because Lucas White on the Omaha Indian Reserve, he was looked after by the Sitonga. 10 or 11 years old, ran in the house. Dad was on the chair, laid back, discolored, not breathing. Ran a mile and a half down the road to the next farm, and they drove back. And sorry, Lucas, your dad passed, as they put a blanket on him. Brought Lucas into town to the police. Police got the social service, brought him to his mother's house, and his mother, raving alcoholic at the time. I never wanted to look after you kids. That's why you lived with your dad. I guess now I got to look after you. Go have a bath. I'll put food on the table for you in your coloring book. Lucas said he got, after his bath, he was eating Fruit Loops. And this is evening time. So, tells you right there, reservation, poverty stricken. He's eating Fruit Loops for dinner, and he's coloring. All of a sudden he looked up, he heard something. There was a police officer coming up the back stairs. So he jumped up and ran for the front door, and there was the social service and two police officers and his mom. I can't do this, Lucas. I can't do this. You got to go with them. They're going to find you foster care. So we went to a farmhouse 20 plus miles away that night, elderly non-Indian couple. And he was told he'd do his chores. Here's your bedroom. Here's the food, and you'll go to school. That night, he gathered up as much as he could, money, food, blankets, and he ran away. It took him 3 days, 11 years old, to get back to the Indian Reserve. Started playing with his cousins, and the parents came out. Lucas, the police and social services are looking for you. And us Indians, I don't know what it's like in Hawaii with the Hawaiian people, but us Indians in North America, we fear two things. We don't fear Sasquatch. We fear the police. They take our parents, and we fear social workers. They take our children. And they told Lucas, you go on, get away. You don't come around my kids, your cousins. They might take me and their father. So he went into the bush, and as it got dark, he came back into the village to an abandoned house. And he showed me that house, but it was collapsed when I was there 5 years ago. And he said, I went in there, there's no doors, no windows, just a couch. And I went to sleep. But then the reservation pack dogs were trying to get in, growling and everything. So I ran into a closet, closed the door, and I slept there that night. The next day I played in the bush. And the next night I went to my grandfather's house, and I went up the oak tree that splays out, and I tied myself in the branches crook. I went to sleep with my blanket. Next morning, my grandfather poked me. Lucas, you come down. Here's some money. Here's some food. Your dad and I taught you. When our people die, we leave their houses. We put food and clothing and bedding in their shrines, and we replenish the stuff from time to time for the spirits to live happily in the other world. You go to those houses in the reserve. You know where they are, the islands of trees and the fields. You'll find them, and you know where a lot of them are. You live there, and from now, March, until it gets cold in October, and you come into town, you let the police pick you up, and social services bring you in foster care. And you stay there until March, and you run away again and live in the forest. That was his MO. And after he told me all this, and I noticed he was very feral, how he walked, especially at night, and how he spoke soft and wouldn't look at my eyes, I knew he was with Sasquatch for a time. And I said, Lucas, there's no way a young kid with those wild dogs, other animals out there, coyotes, could ever live on their own. Sitonga looked after you. I have lots to tell you, Tom, in time. And he's been sharing it with me. So we hear stories of humans in India and other countries, even Australia, North America, that went feral and were brought up, seen running with dingoes in Australia, or monkeys or wolves. Well, that's still happening to a certain degree with Sasquatch. We had a 16-year-old kid playing games in his basement of his mobile trailer in Campbell River. Mom said, that bear must be back. Go scare it away. So he walked down the porch. His dog was scared of the bear, wouldn't come out. Little imitation dog. Walked across the lawn, opened the gate, and went into the forest, never to be seen from again. And billboards and posters up in Campbell River for years. Has anyone seen this young boy who was 16 when he disappeared? We had a friend of mine had an audio recorder out about 30 miles from where the kid disappeared, at timestamp 2 a.m. in the morning, out in the middle of Timbuk nowhere, abandoned logging roads. you could hear this crunching. Let me go. Let me go. A boy's voice. So who knows? Maybe it was a Lolly, a ghost out there. Maybe it was that young boy who was taken by the Sasquatches. I don't know. Maybe it was a kidnapper with a young boy. I don't know. But we did pick up something. And, I always dwell on the things that people don't think about when it comes to Sasquatch, like seasonal migrations for heavy, abundant seasonal foods. Everyone goes, oh, they must be just eat deer. I don't eat deer. I think it tastes nasty. It's like sheep. I'm a marine resource eater. So, and beef, but Sasquatch ain't always gonna eat deer, especially where I'm at right now. They're down on the shellfish beaches. There's snow on the ground right now. They don't want to leave their tracks. They're on the saltwater beaches, so they don't leave tracks, and they're harvesting seafood. The elk are tight against the highway, some 5 to 10 miles from where I'm at in Forks, in Beaver, and that area. The elk are in the fields. The elk are in downtown Forks right now. Why is that? Hunting season's over. They don't want to be in the bush. They're out in the open, close to the highways, right in our downtown here, because the Sasquatches are hunting them. It's lean time. There's snow on the ground. So you got to equate things in a different way. It's like when people ask me 10,000 dumb questions managing SasquatchLegend.com here in Forks, Washington. Do you think there's more than one? Give your head a shake. You got to have a female and a male, and you have to have genetic strengthening by having babies with non-family members.
Mhm.
And if you look at the studying of the British Columbia coastal Indians, we use a factor of 10 kilometers. For every 10 kilometers of shallow water, salmon, steelhead, and abundant trout, river, creek, or stream, there's a factor of 4 Sasquatches. So the whole river here on the Olympic Peninsula in the Bogushell are massively long rivers. And I've rafted the whole, and there's probably at least probably 15 to 20 miles of shallow water. So there's 8 Sasquatches based on the formula just on the Hoh. If you look at all the rivers, creeks, and streams with abundant salmon, steelhead, and trout on the Olympic Peninsula, and you multiply it by 4, those rivers and creeks and streams, you get 168 to 225 Sasquatches just on the Olympic Peninsula. Washington State alone, if you did that formula, which I haven't done, I'm imagining you're going to crack well over 1,500. And then if you do that to every state, province, territory, even Mexico, and you're going to end up with probably 250,000. There's a lot of
Absolutely.
Sasquatches out there.
Yeah.
They're proliferating after the diseases, just like us Indigenous people. I was born in 1965, and in the census of 1921 showed that the Kwakwaka'wakw Nation didn't even number 1,200 individuals, where we had like 40,000 plus before contact and afterwards. So 85% of my people died of the diseases. And the Haida Nation, 95% of their people. And some tribes are no longer in existence, 100% gone because of disease. So Sasquatches were the same. But if you correlate the numbers, 1967, Roger Patterson comes out with his film, A Patty. And since then, the Kwakwaka'wakw Nation since 65 has grown to, I think we number over 5 or 6,000 now. But that's indicative of every indigenous tribe in the Americas. We're proliferating like bunny rabbits. So too is Sasquatch.
That's interesting. I asked my mom recently if because my mom is from Japan. She's Japanese, and is there stories in Japan about Bigfoot? And she said yes. They don't call it Bigfoot. They call him white, like a snow abominable snowman, basically, because they have
Yeah,
white hair over there. So I mean,
yeah,
and that's in Japan too. They have it. So I mean, it's all over the world. My mom is from northern Sapporo, so the Hokkaido island, northern. So they have Ainu Indians up there as well.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that's all. I'm sure there's legends and stuff there as well. So yeah, if that's just America, that 250,000, imagine the world.
Oh
And
yeah,
this,
look at Australia. It's a vast country, and they got
yeah.
yowies.
Oh
And
yeah,
even here
that's
in the
right.
Olympic Peninsula, I say it's on like Donkey Kong. I haven't been to a place yet that is other than Omaha Indian Reserve, but this place here is just, I get weekly reports working in the store, you know,
Wow, that's
and
incredible. Hey, Ohana, I hope you're loving this conversation as much as I am. I just wanted to pause for a quick moment to ask for your support. If you're enjoying what you're hearing and feel like we've earned it, we'd be so grateful if you could leave us a rating or review. Your honest feedback really helps us grow and reach more people who love exploring these fascinating topics. And if you think this episode would resonate with someone you know, don't forget to share it with them. Mahalo nui loa for being part of our journey. Now, back to the show.
now that word's getting out because of the modern day smoke signal Facebook, I joined all of the Kalalam County groups in the cities around here, like Port Angeles and Squim. And then I'm sharing my Sasquatch posts from Sasquatch Island, my Facebook group, on those groups. All the locals are like, oh, dang, that man knows a little bit or two about Sasquatch. And as a retired trophy grizzly bear hunting guide, I can take his word. Just, he's got some cred. He's not just talking the talk, he's walked the
Yeah,
walk and still does.
yeah.
So I'm getting these old retired loggers coming in here and telling me stories and encounters and activity
Wow.
on their properties. One guy's invited me, as soon as snow melts in the next couple of days with this rain, Peggy and my wife and I are going to go to his property, big 200-acre area where he's got a lot of activity. And he said, "Oh yeah, bring all your electronic stuff, put your trail cameras up." And then a woman come in here the other couple weeks ago, and she goes, "Here's a picture. I took it yesterday. Sasquatch walked on the trail I walked just at the edge of town here." And I seen their tracks before, heard them, smelled them, heard their tree knocks. But then I saw it yesterday. And then by the time I got my cell phone out, it was in the blackberry and scrub bushes. But I listened to you on your podcast telling people to take as many shots as you can. Zoom in, take many shots, pan slowly with your video on your cell phone, and then go analyze it on a big screen, laptop, computer, or your flat screen. And lo and behold, hey, look, like she did. The Sasquatch is looking at me. It's a perfect face. So,
Wow. That is
so it's
incredible.
like finding a Sasquatch isn't hard. You got to play bush chess. You
I
always
guess so.
stick your finger up wet. Windage. Use the wind to your advantage. Break your silhouette. You're never going to see Sasquatch like that. Very rare.
Mm.
You're going to see them peeking at you like a sniper deep in the
Ah.
bush, like a sniper does in the building, splayed against a tree. So they're looking at you. You're just thinking it's a tree, but you look closer. Dang, that tree's got hair on it and a face. Oh shit, it's a Sasquatch splayed and looking at me. They have all kinds of ways. Look up. Who walks through the forest and looks up? No one. They're looking at what they're going to trip on or slip on. So when you're in
Exactly.
the forest,
Yep.
stop, look around, look up a bit. I'd be amazed what you can see. Sometimes you'll see
Wow.
in the mainland, you'll see a porcupine, squirrel nest, raccoon sleeping, and some people report they see a Sasquatch up there
Oh
sleeping
my
away like
God.
a
Oh
porcupine.
my God.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's any connection between the missing 411 cases and the Sasquatch?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah?
Sasquatch is, I belong to the Hamatsa Society, human flesh eaters. My would have been my god back in the day is Kwakwaka'wakw, the cannibal from the north end of the world. And we belong to him. We do a very sacred, powerful dance of initiation. And it's a secret society to this day. But yeah, the Kwakwaka'wakw people and other tribes in the Pacific Northwest practice cannibalism, but it was more ceremonial, ritualistic, tied to a society. But you can't all of a sudden have ceremonial, ritualistic cannibalism without having a basis, which is gustatory cannibalism. You needed the human food for sustenance. So when you look at the archaeological record and the pollen records and the Ice Age history, you could see that living in coastal British Columbia, my territories, you know, I remember as a kid I don't remember, but I got seen a picture when I was a kid, black and white, standing on ice at saltwater and 2/3 the way up Knights Inlet in Glacier Bay. The glacier came right down to the saltwater when I was a 2-year-old pup. Well, now you go there, it's some 8,000, 9,000 feet up because that's how much the world has warmed up in my lifetime. And other places, the same thing. But living in coastal British Columbia and elsewhere, 5, 6,000 years ago, where we have stories about Kwakwaka'wakw living at the edge of the north edge of the world where the ice fields began. It's telling us like Rivers Inlet and other inlets still were glaciated. And living in British Columbia coastal region based on archaeology and other things I've analyzed and studied, it was like living in Barrow, Alaska without electricity, running water, shelter, and insulation. It was very hostile. And yes, I think we had cannibalism taking place to survive. If the fish didn't show up, shellfish didn't proliferate in the Pacific Northwest until 6,400 years ago. The pollen record shows the forests of softwood trees, cedar, and so forth didn't start to proliferate until 6,600 years ago. So we know our archaeological record goes back some 12,000, even 14,000 years. So it was a hostile place to live. So Sasquatches, when they're a husband, clan leader, like Biggie, got a wife, got a daughter, got a son, life's cool. Go to rendezvous with the other Sasquatch clans where we hear the mass vocalization being recorded from time to time. Another one came out today on Facebook and TikTok of mass vocalizations. That's clans coming together for potlatch powwow rendezvous and roaring at each other. I'm bigger, I'm richer, because everything does that. And then you get your tier structure in and who's going to speak first, go eat first at the elk carcass that was hunted and dragged in. There's a hierarchy. And so those Sasquatches are happy. But then all of a sudden, Bush code, a younger, stronger male will challenge clan leader and topple him eventually. And strengthening of the gene pool of species takes place. The ousted Biggie leaves, busted up, torn up. Never going to see my wife and kids again. Never going to sleep with my wife again. I hate that young buck that come from the other side of the mountain and did this to my arm. Now it's hard. How am I going to eat? How am I going to bring down an elk or a deer? I'm all buggered up. My shoulder is broken. My ribs are broken. Got a bad fight. And then all of a sudden he's starving. He's cold. He's thinking about his wife and kids. And just like humans that snap and go postal and do atrocities to their fellow humans with a gun or a knife, that Sasquatch snaps. And all of a sudden it kills a human hiker out there, find their backpack, find their walking stick, find their bear spray, but no hiker. Shoes still there on the rock where they're sitting in the sun. Well, Sasquatch, easy pickings. They like beans, like eating human beings. And a human is the dumbest, easiest animal to hunt if they don't have a gun. And, look at all those stupid hikers that are out there with nothing. And they disappear, missing 411. Some end up being a steaming turd on the side of the forest trail because that Sasquatch now goes, gee, that was an easy hunt. My belly's full. I got enough meat there to do me. And a couple weeks later, oh, more humans. Better go give me another one. So they go rogue, and that's the rogue Sasquatch. They've gone postal. They've snapped. I know. I was there. I got so sick of humanity in Night of Desert Storm. The next day, I went to the bush, and I didn't come out permanently or for a long period until 9.5 years later. And at times, I was living like a Sasquatch, eating like a Sasquatch, out of cigarettes, out of coffee for months. But I'd pull a branch down like a Sasquatch and look at where the helicopter had landed below me. I'd walk down some 2, 3 hours from the mountain and look into the branches because I'm so in tune with the bush. My nose, I can smell the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I can smell the coffee with sugar and cream that person's pouring from a thermos. I can smell that cigarette smoke of that one guy smoking it. And as much as I wanted a cigarette and coffee and maybe that guy's half of his roast beef sandwich, I just lifted up the branch did like a Sasquatch, turned and disappeared into the forest. I didn't want to be around them. I knew that humanity had nothing good for me at that stage of my life. What good were those filthy, rotten, hairless humans going to give me? And that's how a Sasquatch thinks. And that's why I have such a great understanding of them. I've gone into the bush for months, years at a time. I'd come out for partying, cashing checks and provisions and seeing family, but I'd get back in bush as soon as I could. And then when I did get sued for $640,000 in 2007, and then 8 months later, when the mother of my children, my common law wife, pointed to the door and told me to get the beep out, I jumped on a ferry from Haida and I was working my way on the ferry back to Vancouver Island. And I had one thing on my mind. When I get back to Vancouver Island, I'm going to make some money so I can put gas in this Jeep and I'm going to hunt those two SOBs that sued me. And I am going to serve the dish of revenge very cold and nasty. And then when I pulled in the Campbell River, I was saved by a sign on a motel placard. Success is not defined in how high you reach. It's how high you bounce when you hit rock bottom. And those two SOBs are still alive to this day, and I'm still bouncing. And I almost snapped and went postal. So I know what it's like being a rogue.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. Wow. Are there any connections between Sasquatch and other cryptids in indigenous folklore, like Windigos, things like that? Besides,
Well, what
the
you just said, Windigo. In
mm,
Cree, it's pronounced Witago. So when I went to
Windigo.
my mom a few years ago, I said, Mom, what do you know about Windigo? What's wrong with you? Witago. Say it properly. Typical Windigo.
Yeah.
So she told me as much as she could.
Mm.
And then I asked her to reach out to her sisters and brother, but they're so bloody contaminated with that damn Christianity. I'm a Christian, but I don't shove a Bible down my throat sideways and wash away my culture and heritage of indigenous upbringing. But anyway, they wouldn't answer anything. So I reached out to other people and then piecing everything I could find to date about Witago, the Windigo, horns of a deer and elk on its head, stinky carrion type hide, emaciated, shriveled up body, hobbling with a stick sometimes, cannibalizing. That's the key, cannibalizing. So it tells us right there a human, because you can only have a species eating its species to get the term cannibal. So right there, when you hear cannibal giant, like cannibal of the bush, cannibals of the mountains, cannibals of the forest, translated from tribal Indian names, they're telling you they're humans. That's why we call them cannibals. And then you hear about Witago. Well, I think it's a Sasquatch because they're big, but skinny, ribs showing, grayish skin, no teeth. Well, Sasquatches live over 100 years old in most cases. And Sitonga, keeper of the medicine. When I asked the medicine woman in my training in Omaha, how old Sasquatch get? 150, 180 years old down here. Some of them close to 200 that are white and gray. Oh, how'd they get so old? Like my mom turned smack. What's wrong with you? You pay me money to teach you shamanism from my tribe, and I teach you. See, Tonga, keeper of the medicine. They have forgotten more about traditional remedies than we will ever know. That, and she said, that's why we don't see them with big abscesses. I've seen grizzly bears with their cheek jaw out there from abscessed teeth. And I've killed them with big, ugly, nasty pusses and boils on them. And she said that, some of them, they go alone. Some Sasquatches are like us. Some are vagabonds, loners. They don't want to be around people like I was for a time. Well, maybe they don't have the medicine skills taught to them. And all of a sudden, that Sasquatch now is getting on in age. Tapeworms and other worms are eating it from the inside out. It's getting emaciated, ribs showing, gray colored skin because the liver is sick. Maybe it's got some cancer. It's got cataracts. It's got abscessed teeth and no teeth. And it finds a carcass of a deer. It's cold, so it rips the hide off. It's all stinky like carrion, and it's having trouble walking because of all the arthritis and maybe injury. So it's got a stick now like a cane, but it wants to get at the humans. But every time it comes hobbling out, they all run screaming. There's a big skinny Sasquatch. Oh, I know. I'll just put that deer skull with the horns on my head tied on. Now I'll go running out at him, and they'll get so scared they just we to go, and they freeze. Then I go up, snap their neck, smash their skull, eat the brains. That's the highest concentration of protein. Eat their tongue, eat their liver, eat their heart. Now a dying Sasquatch, which was termed a Windigo, is now got a full belly. It's going to live a little bit longer. Everything in the forest will fight tooth and nail to survive. I know, I've been there. And that's what I think a Windigo is.
That is interesting. That is
And I'm
really
the only
interesting.
one who's ever come up with that by putting
Yeah,
two and two, adding it up, and looking at all
absolutely.
the I's dotted and T's crossing. The evidence is there when you
Yep,
do the forensic analysis of the encounters of Windigo and the native Indian stories of their Windigo.
absolutely. Is that like a rake then? Same thing?
I don't know. I've got some guy in Forks who come and showed me. He thinks he's got a rake and he's
Okay.
seen it and everything. And I'm just like, dude, I've heard the term. I don't know anything about rakes. I'm too dang busy with Sasquatch.
That's too funny. Does any of the First Nation tribes feel upset that you share these stories with people? Do they prefer
I
maybe to
respect
keep it?
all of the tribes, and that's why I have permission from the tribes to use their tribal names. And I have a lot of dear friends in many tribes and family. And I do know some tribes they don't even speak about Sasquatch, let alone the little people. And and then yeah, sure, I get the crab syndrome Indians. I've always been attacked. I was Tommy the tour whore, the culture vulture when I was doing native cultural tours in my abandoned native village. They were all collecting welfare and going to make work projects because the commercial fishing and the logging collapsed on us. Instead of being a welfare recipient or begging to the government for handouts, I was in my abandoned native village, which I have every right to do, and I got chief and council's permission, and I was sharing my family's stories and our culture because I'm a historian. I study culture, and the people that condemn me, they didn't pass grade 9. You know, I've got grade 12 and some university and college in me. Plus, I'm always still Tommy 10,000 questions. When the internet came out, my mind exploded. I'm just like, oh my God, all this knowledge. I just got to search and I can learn by reading and watching. So to me, I got no use for the crab syndrome Indian. I'll, from time to time, I'm always hitting their claws when they reach out at me. And I call it stonewalls. When someone stonewalls you, you dig a hole and go underneath the wall to get past it. You go around it. You go over it. But from time to time, I'll go physical and I'll hit that wall so bloody hard the shrapnel flies to other crab syndrome Indians and they feel the sting of the shrapnel. So, in other words, I'll go fisherman res Indian on someone when they get lippy with me and just make sure there's no surveillance cameras. So that when they do sit there and gossip and backstab about me, did you hear about Tommy? Yeah, I saw his arm. He had a big chunk of meat out of his right arm. Tommy was apparently jumping so high up, he was hitting his head on the galley of the roof in the boat and slamming his head on the table. And then he so and so bit Tom because I still got the scar right there.
Oh my
So I said,
God.
"You want to bite? I'm a Hamatsa. I'll show you how to bite." And I tore a big chunk out of him, spit it in his face. So now the chatter's out there. Don't crab syndrome Tom Sewid because he used to hunt grizzly bears for a living. And if he wants, he'll hunt you and he'll make your life miserable. He'll go rogue on your butt. And that's what we need to do. Because back
Yeah.
in the day in North America, I can't speak for the Hawaiians, but I imagine it was the same way. I was brought up commercial fishing, seaweed picking, clam digging, logging camps, commercial fish boats. It was no, oh, Tommy, you did a mistake. Come here. We're going to have a little discussion about this. And the next time you do this, we're going to write you up. And we might send you for counseling where we'll put the eagle feather on the floor and hold hands and all go, and we'll resolve your issues. No, I never was brought up like I was brought up with
Yep.
bang, kick in the back end. What's wrong with you? You beep, beep, beep. You stun, beep, beep, beep.
Yes.
You do that mistake again, you'll cost us thousands of dollars of fishing gear. Don't you be doing stupidity like that. That's how you get through to them, because that's how the North American Indians once were. That's why I always teach people that we're not like the Maoris. We will never, as North American Indigenous, win a Oscar award for a movie called Once We Were Warriors. We have always been warriors. You always be a warrior. You teach your children to be warriors, and you teach the weak to be warriors, because we are never going to win an Oscar for some documentary or movie called Once We Were Warriors. There is no once when you're Indigenous. You got to be like a Sasquatch, and that's how they live. They have laws, very strict laws. We'll find a crib toy out in the forest in Omaha Indian Reserve, 3 miles from any road or house. We'll find a plastic car in the middle of the forest, Vancouver Island, some 15 miles from any community, and other reports of that. But what it is the Sasquatches are coming into our urban edge. So mom's got young Sasquatch. Okay, yeah, they're snoring and farting up in their bedroom. They're sleeping. Let's go to the compost. Sasquatch I tracked in the snow one time went to 12 composts along a railway line at the edge of a city or town. Can you imagine a Sasquatch going to a compost and lifting the lid, and there's half a soft cantaloupe, potato peelings, uh, bones, the list goes on. Hit 10 of them, it's like us going to an Indian casino and going to a buffet. It's on. Look at all this good food, diversity. So Sasquatches are coming in for those. Our greenhouses, our fruit and veg in the gardens, pet and livestock food, outbuildings like here with game and fish, and the Sasquatches are going in there and eating. So all of a sudden they're eating away, and a little kid Sasquatch looks down and grabs a crib toy. Spin, 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 squeak, 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 jingle, jingle, jingle with the bell. Look at all the colors. Oh, I'll take this. Gets 3 miles into the forest with mom. Mom's being spoiling her child, which isn't right. And all of a sudden, a male Sasquatch comes by, or an older female, by the head of that young juvenile Sasquatch. Drop that. You know the laws. We don't take anything of the hairless bipedals. You shouldn't have picked that up. You leave that there until you ever touch it again, until some mushroom picker comes across it, who's human, and goes, how the hell did the cryptoid get out here? Well, I better bring it to Lucas and tell him. And so that's the kind of how I delve deep. I've jumped off the abyss of Sasquatch. I'm in that deep, deep depths with what I investigate on and research. That's the only time I'll use the R word, when I'm interacting, having my Diane Fossey, Jane Goodall moment with a hairly bipedal human, hairless one. Then I'm researching, because I'm eyeball to eyeball with it, and I'm finding out amazing things about Sasquatch.
That's incredible that they also have rules.
Oh, they have rules. Well, this is how Lucas started his conversations when I first met him. I'd ask him a question. They have laws, very strict laws, Tom. The Satonga have very strict laws. Then he'll chatter, chatter, chatter like a Sasquatch, teaching me stuff. And then he'll end it by going, they have laws, very strict laws, Tom. So then the next question, oh, they have song, dance? I see the young ones sometimes bouncing around, but hear them humming, especially the females. And it seems more, and now you got to remember that's region specific. So for the Omaha territories, he says it's the males are almost like they don't not allowed to sing and hum, but the females do, especially when they're harvesting. And do they have religion? I wouldn't call it that. You'd say they have understanding. They understand that in order to stay healthy and to be on balance and harmony with the environment, you should only drink water at the spring. So their reserve has a lot of springs. And where there's a spring, you will find Sitonga bedding areas and so forth. And even though you got the Missouri River going all the way through the eastern edge of the Omaha Indian Reserve, asked them, do they drink out of the Missouri? Only if it's really hot and needed. They'll walk the distance to get to a spring. And that's harmony and balance with nature.
Yes. Wow, that's incredible. Well, Tom, before we wrap up, I just want to say that I've seen your artwork and it's absolutely beautiful. I love it. I love the way you bring out the Indigenous story, the tradition of life through your pieces. It's truly incredible. Your work doesn't just visually, it's not just visually powerful. I think it carries so much history and meaning. So it's really amazing that you use your talents to preserve and share your culture. So for those
Thanks.
that are listening, where can they find you and your artwork?
So, as my shirt says, I'm Sasquatch Island. So, Facebook, website, sasquatchisland.com, YouTube channel, Sasquatch Island, TikTok, me and Biggie do TikTok, Sasquatch Island. And then once you get to the website, you'll see my name, Tom Sewid, Thomas Sewid. Google it. And, you'll have one door open and skeletons will fall out. Court case I was at, but whatever. Didn't get a criminal record. And the other one is we're at SasquatchTheLegend.com store in Forks, Washington. They brought me in as the manager, trial basis. I liked it so much. I'm going to be here for 5 years till I get my retirement. And they've allowed me to stay at the company house 2 blocks away, got a vehicle to use for the company. I get paid a wage, royalties on the art I create. And we have, I think, 8 or 9 of my designs on t-shirts, tumblers, which are like thermos cups for coffee and cold beverages, uh, mugs like that one,
Beautiful.
coffee
That's
mugs,
beautiful.
15 ounces,
Mm.
um, shower curtains, bath mats, ornaments, stickers, embroidered patches. The list goes on. The one thing I will
Nice.
not do, if it's a container or a vessel that's used for alcohol, like shot glasses, I sublimate them all day long at work, but I will never put one of my native designs on a shot glass or a beer mug. Respect, and that's what my art's all about. I'm honoring my culture, yes, but I'm showing people through my art that Sasquatches are human too. They like fish. That's why he's got a salmon in his hand walking along a creek. The newest design is Sasquatch carrying 2 big Chinook salmon that are like 4 feet long each. And it's a orange fall scene. And then I've did a drum recently of a shellfish digging Sasquatch harvesting on the beach at low tide with a full moon at night. And that's a winter one. So eventually, I think we'll be looking at 2026. I'll have a calendar of all my native designs. And then, of course, on other t shirts, and the best way for everyone is go to SasquatchLegend.com and go to featured artist on the homepage. It's building more and more, but you order stuff through there with your card. And then when I come to work in the morning, I'll look at email, I'll pick it out and I'll package it for you, wrap it, put some stickers in there, Sasquatch related. We got a lot of Twilight stuff too, but mainly Sasquatch. But I'll put Sasquatch stickers in there and then my Sasquatch sticker, Sasquatch Lives Matter, will be in there with my contact information. And I tell people, you can even buy my book. I'll mail it to you. It's autographed. And don't be afraid. You're going to have my cell number in there. Phone me in the evening. And if you just want to talk to me about your encounter or get some understanding on Sasquatch in your backyard, I'll be happy to help you. Because my job is with everything in social media, website, movies, everything I'm doing, it's all about helping one better their chance and understanding to have a close encounter of the hairy kind with
Wow.
Dzoonakwa, Sasquatch.
I would love to see Sasquatch from a distance, not close. Just from a distance. I would love to one time in my life.
I've put 22 people on Sasquatches so far. I do
Wow.
expeditions up in
Wow.
British Columbia, Vancouver Island, and here in Olympic Peninsula. FLIRs, night vision stuff, parabolic listening devices, P1000 Nikon with a big telephoto lens, binoculars, trail cameras. We even have thumpers. Stick them in the ground, and if something walks by, an alarm goes off in our FM frequencies on our radio.
Wow. That's incredible. That sounds actually like a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, you've got to come
Yeah.
out here.
Yes, yes, for sure. Well, thank you again for your time and sharing your knowledge with us today. I truly appreciate it, and I hope you can come back to share about your little people, those stories. Just like Hawaii, we do have the many hoonies, which is there are little people there.
Oh, absolutely, anytime. But my language
Thank
to all
you.
listeners and you, halakilisla. Go in peace.
And that brings us to an end of another episode. I want to give a huge mahalo to my special guest, Tom Sewid, for sharing his time, wisdom, and incredible stories with us. It's always fascinating to hear these perspectives, and I truly appreciate the knowledge he brought to the conversation. And guys, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and leave a positive review. It really helps the show to grow. Also, if you know somebody who would enjoy this episode, please share it with them. The more we spread these conversations, the more we open minds and challenge the narrative we've been given. Until the next time, guys, stay open-minded and keep questioning everything. Ahui ho kako. Bye.